Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Before we do, I just have to say you're in the midst of a very, very moody Chris Andre today. My mum sent me a message. I've been telling my mum for the longest time, December, January, Mum, I really need to lose some weight. I've let myself go. I can't keep using the excuse anymore of working long hours, and I've got to sort myself out. And I know my subscribers have noticed over the years watching these cheeks expand. Look at the size of these cheeks. Look at them. Probably sit on the back of the bus and the bus will do a wheelie. So I've got to sort it out, right? I can't keep doing this. So I said to her, listen, I'm going to start going for my runs, start working out again. I might even start sparring my brother. My brother he's been training in Muay Thai for a very long time. He's in great shape. He's a good fighter. I'll probably catch an arse whooping, but you know, sometimes no pain, no gain. You got to catch an arse whooping to lose some weight. You got to catch an arse whooping. What are you going to do? So, Mum, when it's not quite as cold, I'm going to start. So she sends me a message today. Chris, have you seen the temperature today? She's trying to encourage me now. It's not as cold as it has been the last few days. It's not as cold because it's absolutely pissing down. There's cloud coverage everywhere and it's causing insulation. I ain't going running in this. I'm going to need armbands not to drown. Look, are you serious? Am I just making excuses? Maybe I'm just destined to have those Andy Ruiz titties. Who knows? No, man, I've got to sort myself out. But anyway, that aside, let's get serious and let's talk boxing. And let's discuss what I'm now calling Elbowgate, the latest scandal that's gripped boxing fans. It's gaining real traction. This idea that maybe Liam Smith intentionally elbowed Chris Eubank Jr. He came in with those intentions and he managed to do it. And whether it was an intentional thing or an accidental thing, there's also the question of the impact it had, the effect. Did it win the fight for Liam Smith? In other words, had the elbow not landed in the midst of those flurries, does Liam Smith still get the knockout in that moment? If not, it was a very significant moment. So I put out a tweet and I asked these two separate things on polls. And after 296 votes so far, 23% feel that it was intentional, and 77% feel that it was accidental, and 25.8% feel that the elbow won it for Liam, and 74.2% feel that it was the punches that won it for Liam regardless of the elbow. So by and large, it seems to be that there's a correlation between people feeling it was intentional and the outcome. There is, though, a 3.2% swing. So there are some people that felt it was accidental, that 3.2%, but felt it was a significant moment. So let's consider this. I've already covered this in my last video, but I want to add some additional thoughts because I've seen a video from Boxing Beats and Rhymes, which is a brilliant video. He's been putting out some brilliant content of late. And in this video, he basically makes the counter argument to the one I'm making. And it's a very strong argument. And I'm going to use an analogy to show exactly why I believe his argument is very strong. But I will continue that analogy and also explain why I believe that my position still stands. But it's a very good argument. As I've always said on this channel, I'm more than happy to have people that disagree with me, and a lot of my subscribers have disagreed with me on this, by the way. As long as people are able to construct an argument in an intellectual way that involves critical thinking. This is why I've always loved engaging with Hatman, by the way. During the whole thing that shut the world down for all that time, it affected my work. I'd be up all hours of the night. And sometimes I'll be up at 3, 4 in the morning, very often in fact, not just sometimes, having socials with Hatman, debating things. And I love engaging with Hatman. He's obviously a very perceptive, intelligent guy, and on the important key things in life, it was quite clear we agreed. But there were certain things that were also big, important aspects of life where we didn't agree with. But because it was always respectful and I knew I was engaging with somebody so intelligent, so perceptive, it was an enjoyable venture. And that's what I want to be able to do with all my subscribers as well. I've got no problem, like I've always said, if people disagree, as long as they're respectful and as long as they can construct an argument very well. And that's what Beats has done here, and that's what a lot of my subscribers have done. So I want to address this. I want you to go and watch Beats' video rather than just, listening to what I've been saying here to relay it. But if you have already seen the video, then I will just relay a couple of points. But if it's a court case and he's making the case and he's done it very, very well, go and check out his latest upload because it adds a lot more to it than me just explaining it in bullet point form. But one of the areas that Beats' argument is very strong in the idea that it was intentional and that it did have a major impact. And he feels as though Liam Smith was in some sense expected to do that. That's what he's supposed to do in order to close what he feels is a talent gap. So you can't really blame Liam Smith for doing that. Eubank's got to be the one that adjusts to that and fights in the same way. So that beats his position. But what his argument is essentially during the face-off, they reveal intention. So Chris Eubank Jr. tells Liam Smith, you're a dirty fighter, you've been throwing low blows, you throw elbows, and Liam Smith does say, what do you mean when have I ever thrown an elbow? But he's accused of it, and Eubank's position is ultimately that if you are unable to win a fight cleanly, it's because you're not capable of doing it. And as a result from that, it shows ill preparation in reality. And Liam Smith at one point says, I'm willing to do whatever's necessary in order to win this fight. So what Beats is essentially saying right here is that you're in a position where you've openly told people, I am willing to do whatever's necessary. So when you do whatever's necessary in order to win, don't then come to me later on and say, no, it was a clean fight and you didn't do anything dirty. You told us you were willing to engage in something dirty. Something dirty happened. Own it, basically. Now, that's a very strong argument. And I want to give you an analogy as to why it's a very strong argument. And once I've given you this analogy to explain exactly why it is that Beats' position is very, very strong, I'm going to further elaborate on the analogy to explain why, despite the strength of that position, I still stand firm in my own position and why I respectfully disagree with Beats and a number of my subscribers whose views I respect tremendously and still hold firm in my position. Now, I want you to imagine that you've been dragged into a court in front of a judge and it's a very serious case. You're facing potential prison time. What led to you being in this precarious situation? Well, a week ago, you were at a friend's birthday party and you were all having drinks and a laugh. And then the conversations became a little bit more serious. And one of your boys says, would you ever be willing to kill a man? And you're taken aback by the question and you're considering why he would ask. And you say, well, what do you mean? What's the context? And he turns and he says, well, let's say somebody broke into your home. And your response to that is, I will do whatever is necessary to protect my family, my wife, my children. I will do whatever is necessary. You forget about the conversation. It's as though it never happened. It was just a night out party. But a week later, you're in bed. In the dead of night, you hear something downstairs. So you decide to go and check it out. You're wondering, did somebody just break into the house? You look around, you go into the kitchen, you don't see anything. You think, okay, false alarm. But as you turn back around to head back upstairs, you see a hooded, masked man standing in the doorway. You both freeze. You're staring intently. Your heart's racing. Your adrenaline's pumping. And he starts to come towards you. Now, at this point, you know, I have to do everything I can to stop this man getting the better of me in this fight. What happens if he hurts me, if he knocks me unconscious? My children, my wife, they're left at the mercy of this man. So you have a quick look around in the kitchen and you grab yourself an iron cast pan and you go for him. He comes at you, you hit him upside the head, he falls, he hits his head a second time, he's a bloody mess. He's not moving. You pick up the phone, you call the police. They arrive and they pronounce him dead. The police take your statement, they leave, they take the body, you're relieved. You're fine, your family's fine. A couple of days later though, there's a knock at your door, there's sirens outside. You look outside, you open the door, and it's the police. And they've told you that you're under arrest. It emerges that somebody recorded that party night. And you were picked up on camera saying if somebody broke into your home, you'd be willing to do whatever's necessary, even kill a man. Well, now your defense team is in a precarious situation, and so are you. How do you convince them that despite you being willing to do that if it was necessary in that specific moment, that's not what you chose to do? Because this is a similar situation to what Liam Smith is in. You've ultimately admitted that you would be willing to do whatever's necessary in the midst of being accused of being a dirty fighter, of throwing low blows, of throwing elbows in fights, and yet you want to tell us that in that particular moment, you were not guilty? Well, in that situation, the defense team has to try and observe the evidence and say, look, this points to the fact that I am innocent of what I'm being accused of. Now, in this particular analogy, I might point to that sharp implement in the picture next to the iron cast pan. I'm not going to mention what it is because I don't want to trigger algorithms. But had my intent been to kill this man, I could have picked that implement up. I didn't though. I picked up the iron cast pan. Now, even if you had picked up the sharp implement, it doesn't necessarily prove anything. You may have picked it up in a state of panic. You might have picked it up as a deterrent and he went for you and you struggled and things happened. It doesn't necessarily mean you had the intention to kill this man. But the fact that you picked up the less lethal of the two potential weapons is a major argument in your favor for saying that you did not intend in that moment to make the choice to kill this man. So let's consider what the equivalent is of picking up the frying pan rather than the sharp implement with regards to this specific fight? Well, in the video the other day, I showed how initially when they were engaging, Liam Smith was throwing a left hook to the body and he smothered himself. And you can see the position that they're in here. And he's looking to throw a subsequent left hook. And because Eubank is upright and standing tall, that left hook needs to come from a low trajectory going upwards. It's almost like a shovel hook rather than a hook, which would explain why when he subsequently throws the punch, his arm is in a vertical position. He's punching upwards. But when you see these side-by-side stills, I want you to look at the head positioning of Chris Eubank Jr. He's in a position here whereby if the trajectory of that punch continues and he does not roll, he does not move to get out of the way of that shot, that glove would land flush on the side of his head. Can you see it? Look at the side-by-side picture of where the head is initially and where the glove ends up. There's no elbow involvement in that. But as Eubank rolls, the shot comes over the top and it ends up forcing a connection. As a result of that, I don't believe this is intentional. You have to understand we're talking about milliseconds, fast flurries against a fast moving target up close. It's very difficult here to readjust in a split second, a fraction of a second, and to be able to say, right, okay, I've missed the punch, I'm going to land an elbow now. It's very difficult to do that. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't a predetermined approach to be potentially dirty. And what I mean by that, again, something I mentioned in the last video, is that there are methods that you can throw a punch by turning the elbow over, which could potentially lead to a scenario where the follow through could potentially still land on the opponent. Let me give you an analogy from another sport to explain exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Let's give football as an example. When a defender goes in particularly hard for a challenge and he's gone in with such velocity and momentum that both feet might come off the ground, his intention is not necessarily to hurt the opponent. And it's certainly not necessarily to break the opponent's leg. But by going in recklessly like that, he's aware that if he misses the ball or follows through and the opponent's leg is planted and they connect at the exact moment where his full weight distribution is on that planted leg, it's very possible that he goes directly through the opponent and snaps his leg. So whilst the aim was never to break the leg of the opponent, he understands that he's gone in a manner that could potentially be dangerous play. Well, by the same token, Liam Smith may have been throwing punches in a certain way in order to make it as rough and as dirty as possible. And if something was to land, well, then it was to land. I didn't do it intentionally in that moment, but it's a byproduct of my general approach. Now, I guess we'll never truly know. How can I possibly know whether this was a predetermined thing from Liam Smith? What I will say, though, is that it's an assumption, it's speculative. There's no evidence based on what I have seen to suggest personally to me that he would have been able to adjust in such a short space of time, get the elbow over when he was quite clearly trying to punch him in the side of the head initially. So based on that, it's an assumption that I can't just make. Now, did the connection of the forearm stroke elbow, whichever part it is that struck him, is that what determined the outcome of the fight? I can't obviously know exactly what Chris Eubank Jr. felt in that moment. In MMA, elbows land consistently. They do in Muay Thai as well. And they can be very damaging. A lot of the times it's superficial, whereby it will cause serious swelling or it can cause a cut. But it doesn't necessarily lead to a situation where a guy is completely concussed. It can also knock him spark out, don't get me wrong. But it's not always the case. In other words, if it happens and it's going to hurt someone badly, it's usually a very full flush connection and in an area where it can really daze somebody, like in the temple. In this sort of scenario, it may have caused some serious pain at underneath the eye of Chris Eubank if that swelling is indeed indicative of the forearm stroke elbow landing. But it's not typically, based on the trajectory that we saw there, that short traveling velocity after he sort of missed the punch, it seems, the initial punch. That's not what I would assume would knock him into a state where he's concussed. But I can't know for sure. Now, these sorts of connections, whether it's the wrist, the bicep, the forearm, the elbow, they're quite common in boxing because you're talking about fast flurries and you're talking about a moving target and you're talking about milliseconds. And David Corner from Undisputed Fight Talk, he tweeted to say, "Yo, must have forgot," with a Roy Jones shot landing on Joe Calzaghe, which dropped Calzaghe. Now that was the forearm landing directly on the chin. And this was a knockdown that did indeed count. Now, whilst I understand what David Corner is saying here, the fact of the matter is, if the referee had seen this, then it would not have counted as a knockdown. So if you are of the opinion that the connection had a major impact on Chris Eubank Jr., then of course your position's going to be the referee should have noticed it, he should have taken the time out, told Liam Smith to stand in the opposing turnbuckle and given Eubank 5 minutes to recover. If he was unable to recover, then it would have been deemed a no contest, as it was not a legitimate blow. Based on me seeing it, I can't assume that it was so significant that it led to the actual knockout itself. To me, it looked like there was a big right hand before that. When it eventually came, you then subsequently saw a big uppercut whereby you could see the eyes of Chris Eubank Jr. He seemed lucid but uncomfortable up to that point. His eyes start to stare off into space, into oblivion. That was a massive shot. Then after that came the huge left hook which dropped him. So for me, it was the punches that caused the damage and dictated the outcome of the fight, rather than the elbow or the forearm. But I do totally understand why Beats would feel that it was predetermined based on what he had said previously, and I understand why a lot of my subscribers would feel that if it was predetermined, or even if it wasn't, but it was significant enough, then it shouldn't have counted as a knockout. It's not the position I take, but like I say on this channel, I always play the defense and the prosecution. I always try to be as fair as possible, and I want to hear your opinions in the comments sections down below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.